Thank you for standing by, and welcome to the LBT Innovations Quarterly Investor Call. All participants are in a listen-only mode. There will be a presentation followed by a question and answer session. If you wish to ask a question, you will need to press the star key followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Brent Barnes, CEO and Managing Director. Please go ahead.
Everyone, this is Brent Barnes, and must apologise for my croaky voice. I picked up a cold in my travels to the US recently, so I actually feel completely fine, but I sound a little bit clogged up and horrible, so excuse me for that. But it's great to be talking with you all again on our quarterly investor call. Since our previous call in October last year, I've had the opportunity to meet with a number of shareholders in person at both our annual general meeting as well as our APAS Technology Showcase events in November. As we kick off 2020, I'll talk through the highlights of the previous quarter. Our CFO, Ray Ridge, will take us through the financials, and I'll wrap it up with a business outlook before heading into questions and answers. As in the past, a recording of this call will be made available on our website later today. I'd now like to introduce our Chief Financial Officer, Ray Ridge, who is with me on the call today.
Thanks, Brent. The usual formality before we commence, I would like to remind those on the call that today's update may contain forward-looking statements which involve inherent risks and uncertainties. Those risks and uncertainties include those disclosed in our ASX lodgements, which we do recommend that you review. There are reasonable grounds for any forward-looking statements made today. However, due to their inherent uncertainties, we recommend that you do not place undue reliance on those statements, and actual results may, of course, differ materially from those forward-looking statements. We're now ready to go. Back to you, Brent.
Great. Thanks for that, Ray. To start, I'm going to provide some commentary on our activities during the quarter to the end of December 2019, which we outlined in our Appendix 4C, filed with the ASX on the 30th of January. The quarter began with the positive news of a sale of an APAS independence instrument to our German reference site, Labor Dr. Wisplinghoff. This was achieved shortly after we received CE mark for our MRSA analysis module. This was an important requirement for the laboratory as they process over 800 MRSA specimens per day. We've been working with the lab owner, Professor Hilmar Wisplinghoff, for some time now, and he remains a strong advocate and ambassador for the technology. Some of you may have had the chance to meet with him when he came to Australia in October to work with the company and share his perspective on why the industry needs the AI technology of our APAS independence. On his return to Germany, he opened up his laboratory to host a number of European laboratory leaders to view the APAS independence in action. Elsewhere in Europe, our European sales executive has been active in growing our pipeline of targets in Germany and also the UK. To date, we have identified over 340 targets across these two countries, and we're in active sales meetings and discussions at varying stages with approximately 25 laboratories. In the United States, we have recently appointed a California-based sales executive. He's previously held senior sales roles with Beckman Coulter and Accelerate Diagnostics. It's awesome to have feet on the street, and in addition to his own network of potential customers, he'll be focusing on progressing the 190-odd leads that we've generated through our outbound lead generation initiative. For the past 2 weeks, he's been in Australia for product training. He's met with potential customers on sales visits and really immersed himself with our product development team to ensure that he's well prepared to initiate these sales calls when he returns home to the US. In previous investor calls, we've talked about a global healthcare company currently evaluating the APAS independence for potential distribution appointment. This process has been ongoing with significant effort invested by them to generate voice of customer feedback, evaluate serviceability and reliability, as well as establishing a portfolio product strategy. APAS is a complementary product within their existing technology suite, and they have a robust and lengthy process to incorporate new technology within their portfolio. We have been impressed by their rigour and continue to work with them on what will likely be a phased geographic launch. By this I mean it's unlikely to be a single global arrangement from day one. I know everyone wants a definitive date when we can announce a formal relationship, but the reality is that at this point in time, we can't provide any definitive guidance. I can say there is genuine intent to formalise an engagement, and I have a positive outlook with respect to the efforts we are making on this front. On the product development front, the team have been working hard on preparing the technical dossier to support our FDA 510K submission for the MRSA analysis module. This is the module, of course, which we CE marked already last year. They've been progressing on our next analysis module for vancomycin-resistant enterococcus, or VRE. Similar to MRSA, testing for infectious agents like VRE is a key activity supporting hospitals in the fight against the spread of antibiotic sensitivity bacteria. Additionally, our software engineers have been working with a major laboratory information management system middleware vendor called Data Innovations to build a middleware driver for the APAS independence. Data Innovations are the largest middleware provider globally and currently support over 1,200 different instrument drivers for a variety of instruments in over 85 countries globally. In the US, which is clearly one of the key markets for APAS independence, the Data Innovations product is installed in approximately 65% of all labs. Once the driver is completed, it will facilitate easy connection of the APAS instrument with the laboratory information management system of our customers using the Data Innovations platform. This is important for all customers, as once connected, they're able to get the full utility of the instrument within their laboratory. Now I'd like to hand it over to Ray, who's going to talk through the financial information.
Thanks, Brent. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to briefly review the financial results that were reported in our Appendix 4C. These numbers are in Australian dollars and in accordance with ASX listing rules are not audited. So for the quarter ended 31st of December, the total net cash outflow from operating and investing activities was 1.4 million. This was a little lower than our 1.7 million forecast in the September activities report. This was largely the timing of funding payments and expense reimbursements with CCS. Our cash balance at the end of December 2019 was 7.3 million, and with the 1.1 million received for our R&D tax incentive subsequently in January, it takes available funds to 8.4 million. For the coming quarter, we forecast LBT's net cash flows from operations and investing activities to be maintained at that similar level of about 1.7 million. Back to you, Brent.
Thanks, Ray. I'd now like to provide a brief outlook on our plans for this year. As some of you may have seen, I did attend the JP Morgan Investor Conference held in San Francisco in early January to meet with a number of investors. As part of those meetings, we also released to the ASX a new investor presentation which was intended to better lay out the pathway ahead for this and coming years as we roll out and launch additional modules and products. If you haven't already seen this presentation, I would recommend you take a look either on the ASX platform or it's also available under our website in the investor section. Over the coming quarters, we expect to achieve some important milestones related to further product developments and enhancements that will aid our market access plans. Firstly, we are continuing to work collaboratively with a potential distributor in order to agree on a relationship. This is in addition of the work of our European and US sales executives who are respectively targeting new sales and customers. I'd like to remind investors again of the lengthy sales cycle that does exist, which is typically greater than 12 months. Having resources on the ground is critical to follow up on the leads, and with the US sales executive now on the ground in the single largest global market, we'll be focusing a lot of effort to ensure that he is supported. Our goal is to work very hard in a targeted way to convert sales with customers that we have already identified and where we have product evaluations in play. On the operational front, we expect to submit our 510K application for the MRSA analysis module to the US FDA in the first quarter of 2020. Once this is cleared, we will have both our urine and MRSA analysis modules available for sale, which expands the clinical utility we can offer customers in the United States. Development work will also be ongoing for our VRE analysis module and also the Data Innovations middleware driver for the APAS independence. Both of these milestones are expected to be completed in the second half of 2020. And finally, as with prior years, we'll be showcasing the APAS instrument at major conferences in Europe and the United States to build adoption and awareness. In Europe, we'll be demonstrating the instrument at the European Congress of Clinical Microbiology in Paris, which is in April, and we have key opinion leaders who've had their abstracts already accepted and will be presenting at that conference on our behalf. In the United States, we'll also have a booth at the ASM Microbe Conference, which is held in Chicago in June, and we also have a highly respected US lab that will present data on their MRSA experience with the APAS independence. In summary, the last quarter has made steady progress with our commercialization efforts in the US, Germany, and the UK through our ongoing lead generation efforts. Our US and European-based sales executive provides boots on the ground to support our sales and marketing activities within these key regions. I'd like to thank you all that have joined the call today, and I'd now like to open it up for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. If you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. If you wish to cancel your request, please press star 2. If you are on a speakerphone, please pick up the handset to ask your question. Your first question comes from Paul Jens from PAC Partners. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Hey, Paul. Yep, we can hear you.
Excellent. Just firstly on the distribution, some questions there. We understand the US because that person you got on the ground is 100% LBT and following up the 190 leads. Just in Europe, can you just explain, I suppose, the relationship with Westinghouse and perhaps people on the ground that you have there to follow up the 240 leads there?
Yeah, so we did appoint a European-based sales executive. So they're based in the Netherlands. So they've been at play for about 12 months now, and so he's been really the one primarily going around and moving forward with a lot of those sales leads. We didn't have a call center where we as we did in the US, and so we had a bit of a different approach, I guess, for Europe, where we really utilised his existing relationships throughout Germany primarily, and in the UK we already had some existing contacts there. So what he's really been focusing on, again, is being really targeted in his approach. We have had evaluations of the instrument that have been completed, and we're working through a sales and procurement process at various stages, as I kind of mentioned in the call.
So the Westinghouse is I suppose, the reference centre and the key opinion leader that the sales exec that's based in the Netherlands uses as a reference point, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And so Hilmar's been very good. As I said, he opened up his lab, and as an example, one of the things Jan has done is facilitated that visit, and so we had a number of lab directors from other laboratories in Germany come and visit Hilmar's lab. He's got quite a large lab there with a kind of auditorium setting. We did a half-day workshop which involved Hilmar talking, presenting, involved Jan and us talking, presenting about the technology, the clinical trials, the clinical proof points, and then saw the instrument in action in the lab setting. And that's really important. And again, Hilmar led those efforts in terms of the demonstration of the instrument and how he's adapted his workflow within the lab to incorporate APAS with respect to his clinical workflow.
Excellent. And just in Asia, what's the progress there? Are you managing, or your team managing, the Asian Australian sales?
Where Asia's not a focus for us at the moment. We're being really targeted we're a small company with resources that we really need to have a sharp focus on. And so we remain just really focused in the 4 launch markets, if you like, which is Australia, the UK, Germany, and the US. And we feel that we've got our work cut out for us in those 4 countries, where the addressable market is 2,000 labs just in those 4 countries alone. So we're being very, I guess, sharp with our focus, and we're not trying to go too broadly in 2 different time zones and kind of different customer demands. So we're currently not focusing on Asia and being really sharp with our launch country focus.
Good. And just with the global distributor, and how does that tie in with the network that you're building out in Europe, UK, and the US? If they're brought on board, how will they interact?
Yeah, so it's kind of complementary. It's been part of. I think I've provided some commentary on this before. Is what these distributors like to see is a pipeline, and so we've had to do a lot of that heavy lifting, right? So the work that we've done in all of those markets, whether it's the US in the lead generation or whether it's Europe with developing the pipeline of customers and qualified those with our sales executive is really a complementary activity to motivate and support distributor appointment. But the way it would practically work is that we would essentially work hand in hand. We have one person, Jan, who's based in the Netherlands, like I mentioned. So the idea is that he will work collaboratively, manage the distributor in some calls with potential customers, be walking in side by side with this potential distributor and their resources. But the whole concept is that they have more than one person, right? And they have an existing product portfolio that this sits really nicely within. They've got an existing network and marketing and breadth, and that will really provide much more scale than what we're able to do as a single product company trying to be really targeted in our approach.
Yep. And final thing is just with the middleware, how important is that to securing the sales? Is that an additional thing? You can secure sales before you get the middleware sorted out, I'm assuming?
We can. So there are, but it is, it's a really important thing actually. So every single lab has a laboratory information, so a software system that all instruments talk to. And all of these plates and specimens are all barcoded, and there's efficiencies that are at play. So there are many different LIS vendors that exist. So we have an open, it's called an HL7 interface. It's a standard interface that all of these instruments utilize. So technically we can quite easily interface to any laboratory information management system. The reality is that because of the number of instruments that exist in labs, there are a number of additional requests, IT requests, if you like, that exist to do different things and manipulate the way that data is moved from one instrument into the LIS. And we're on effectively a backlog of priority. And so what the middleware does for us is that it creates a driver that is just simply installed for all those customers who have a data innovations platform. So it means that the heartache or the issues that we have in terms of trying to get up that prioritization queue is completely mitigated, and we expect in some respects, even through the evaluation process, the evaluation could include, with a data innovations platform, a direct interface. And what that means is that labs can not only hypothetically see the data kind of going from the instrument, but they can see that in real time. So it certainly absolutely helps that sales cycle shorten, we believe, and partnering with a vendor like Data Innovations, which, to be honest, has been 9 months we've been working with them. So this has been working in the background, and we've been kind of working with their technical teams again to get our technical interface elevated to a priority for them. So that work's been at play, and we've known this for some time, and we're coming to a point where we think, well, look, we've already got a version of the driver here at our facility in Adelaide, and we expect to be working with potential customers who already have a Data Innovations middleware over the next couple of months. So we expect it to be relatively soon that we can close out this technical development.
Thank you very much, Brent. I'll go back in the queue.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Interpol Singh from AO Smart Enterprises. Please go ahead.
Yes, my question is with regards just the Australian market, the appointment of any distributors. That's the only question that I have. Maybe I didn't read any investor seminars yet, but please just explain with the Australian distributors. That's it. Bye.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, no problem. So we're not looking to appoint a distributor in Australia. We effectively are LBT are direct, so we're selling directly to laboratories here in Australia. I've mentioned kind of in previous calls and commentary, Australia's a small market. It's an important market, obviously, because we're based here, and it was our launch market with St Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne, which was the global first laboratory who used the instrument and have subsequently purchased an instrument. So it's been an important launch market for us, but the reality is it's a very small market and divided into kind of two categories of customers. The first is private laboratories, and these are laboratories like your Sonics, your Healius and Australian Clinical Laboratories, kind of the big three. And then you've got your many public hospitals, and the public hospitals go through a tender process. And the tender process is one that is hard to predict when they're going to open up a tender, and so it's one that we work from both a government perspective to support what is mainly a centralised procurement activity in each of the states. But in parallel to that, we also work with a number of the public hospitals to create the awareness and the demand at the laboratory setting with the public hospital context. So it's a long way of answering your question to say, no, we're not looking to appoint a distributor. We are direct here in Australia.
Well, good. And is there any confirmed, I know you said tenders and all that for all the various hospitals. Is there any confirmed with the private companies?
No, so the private companies don't operate as with a tender process. So we did announce last year that one of those private labs, Australian Clinical Laboratories, or ACL, they've evaluated an instrument and they published their positive results of using the instrument at the Australian Society of Microbiology, and that was done last year. So, look, we remain in conversation with all three of those private laboratories, but they don't operate in a tender fashion. They're more on a typical budgeting cycle that's a fiscal year cycle, and so it's kind of working within their budgetary considerations.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Pete White, a private investor. Please go ahead.
Good day, Brent. How you going?
Good, Pete.
Keith, yeah, mate. Look, I'll keep it brief. Just about your numbers and reading through the quarterly. There's 340 target labs in UK, Germany, 190 US. And basically you're saying you're in sales discussions with 25 in Europe and not sure how many, probably all of them in the US. But anyway, you're also saying that all the labs require a trialling of the instrument. How many instruments are actually out there being trialled in? And you can break that number down in the US, Europe and Australia. How many do we have out there? Knowing that the sales process is over 12 months, how many instruments are being trialled?
So we've had one in Australia. So this is outside of St Vincent. So I guess
yes.
So these numbers exclude St Vincent's in Australia, excludes Hilmar Whistling-Hoff in Europe, and excludes Hennepin Health in the US, right? So we've had we've had two in Australia. We've had one in Germany, and we've got one at play currently in the US. Okay,
so 4 all up at the moment. And see, it is confusing to me because it's somewhere in past quarterlies you've said about the distributor, and you've thought that, or you've sort of stated that the distributor won't come on board until we've got a few sales on the board, so to speak. That's what you've stated before. Sales taking more than 12 months pipeline, and now you're saying we've only got 4 instruments out there. It just seems a long way away to me.
Yeah, look, it is a lengthy process. So I think your kind of perception there is correct. And I mean, we move the instruments around from one place to another place, so we're kind of managing our capex appropriately. But yeah, every lab will want to evaluate the instrument before making a buying decision. And what we're looking to do, like I mentioned, is to be really targeted in our approach. So we're only putting instruments and spending that effort doing the evaluation and working with them on those customers who also have a budgetary consideration that meets the timelines, obviously, that we have. So so that's what we're working through. And all these labs are really busy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are you saying that we only actually have 4 physical instruments out there that can be trialled? And if that's so, is there a backlog of companies wanting to trial it, but they can't because we've only got 4 instruments? Is that what you're saying?
We've got more than 4. But look, we certainly don't have 10. We don't want to have instruments that are lying around. The challenge that I'll kind of talk through the US as an example, right? So the US, we've got quite a prestigious hospital that's had an instrument for a number of months, and they will publish at the American Society of Microbiology meeting that's in June. So that will be really great when we can announce that, hopefully before June. So they'll be publishing a paper which is important for clinical utility purposes. Elsewhere in the US, we do have other hospitals that are interested in evaluating. We haven't been able to mobilise that in an effective way because we haven't had people on the ground. So that's been our challenge in the US, and we've kind of now been able to resolve that through the appointment of this US person. So we expect to move forward fairly quickly on that US front. On the European front, we've had Jan, who's based in the Netherlands, and he's been there for some time. I mean, Labor Wisselinhoff has got 2 instruments installed at his lab. There's an evaluation which is concluded at a group which is a private laboratory chain group, and that's really positive because it means that we've successfully moved through one of their sites and working kind of with head office to move through that process. And look, we're looking to schedule our first in the UK as well as part of an evaluation process there as well. So look, it is what it is in terms of moving through with these customers and trying to get the priority up. And remember, the evaluation takes time out of their busy lab routine, so it's a process to go through. And so that's why I think the important message is it's being really focused and targeted on spending the effort and the resources on those labs who are motivated both by the technology but also motivated with a budget consideration at play as well.
Yeah. Okay then, Brent. Well, thanks for your honest answers. There you go. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
Once again, if you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. Your next question comes from Mark Kirk, a shareholder. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Brent. I hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Glad you're able to join.
Oh, thank you. With the potential distributor having complementary products, are you aware if these complementary products run the DI driver as well?
They do have connection to the DI driver, yes.
So I'm just thinking that I can think of a distributor that has complementary products, and if they were to utilise some of those complementary products with our APAS machine, in my opinion, you've got a relatively cheaper option compared to some of Copan's products that would virtually not only do the same as what they do, but much better with a smaller footprint. Would that be fair to say?
Yep. No, you've done your research very well. Our approach has always been around having a modular approach to automation. So rather than having such as the Copan WASP lab, the 2.5 million end-to-end automation instrument, which still requires a manual culture plate read on a screen, we believe that a modular approach is a much more compelling argument, which provides automation at various touch points. And if you kind of think our founding product, the Previ Isola or MicroStreak, that was modular as well. So it was a modular approach to automate the front-end inoculation and streaking of the specimen on a plate. And then it was, kind of back in 2010 when we thought it would be really great to again, in a modular way, automate the reading of colony growth on a petri dish and automate that part of the workflow. Now, of course, I think the value proposition is much higher for the reading component because the reading part needs to be done by a microbiologist, whereas you can train a technician, so a lower paid, a lower qualified resource to put a specimen on a plate and manually streak it. So we think that the value proposition with automating what is more of a highly skilled activity performed by a microbiologist in culture plate reading, again in a modular way, where we're completely unique, we remain unique with respect to this technical capability, is really compelling for labs.
Look, I agree, and I think even would it be fair to say that the costs associated for potential laboratories would be lessened if APAS is at 300K and let's say a complementary product's at 200K and a competitor's machine, which are the two machines that we could give to the market at $500,000 and Copan's at a couple of million, quite the compelling argument for sales in the future, in my opinion, of course.
Look, I think we'd agree with you, Mark. Just to counter that and provide a bit broader perspective, I think where our challenge is, because APAS is so new, we haven't got those proof points in place yet. So the Copan WASP lab, the Keystra line from BD has been around for 7 years. So they've got an install base of several hundred globally, and so what we need to do is to really have those clinical proof points of modular automation, where we have the upfront inoculation and streaking, and then we have the automated plate reading as part of an end-to-end clinical workflow, and we think that's a great strategy we have done for many years. And our next step, which we're working on, is providing those clinical proof points, which really tells that story for potential customers as a compelling value proposition for people to consider.
Oh, I 100% agree. Would it be fair to say that the potential distributor has suggested would be of great benefit to have the DI interface and certainly make it a hell of a lot more sellable as well? Would that be fair to say?
Yep, it would be.
And companies such as Sonic, I'm just thinking out loud, Sonic and ACL desire such an interface, or some big companies would suggest that would be of benefit to their organisation?
I'll answer it maybe in a bit of a different way. I think if we look at the US, the US have many LIS vendors, and that's why this whole middleware concept came about, because you've got this kind of cluttered LIS provider network that are difficult in some respects to get access to, and so that's where the middleware platform is really helpful. So I think what it does is it helps from a scale perspective to get connectivity and benefits into the lab from a clinical workflow perspective in a more effective and efficient way. We think it will have the potential to reduce the sales cycle that currently exists now. And it just is another thing that we don't have to worry about negotiating with the lab. So we've got the budget consideration, they've done the evaluation, there's the budget consideration, then there's always, well, how do I connect it into the LIS, and when will that happen? So if we can then tick off that box to say, well, we've got a data innovations driver, this is really a plug-and-play activity for you guys, it will really we believe has the potential to shorten that sales cycle, which is obviously beneficial to us,
yes.
And it's obviously a selling point to any potential distribution partner who's considering distributing our technology.
Look, I agree. It would be fair to suggest that eventually, once we do get that traction in the future, that laboratories can simply look at a catalogue and say, yes, I'll contact the distributor and I'll buy one of these and a complementary product, and I'll save myself millions of dollars by not buying a competitor's product, in my opinion.
Sure.
What else was I going to ask? You may have touched upon it. Have some other trials taken place in laboratories in the last 6 months elsewhere in Europe and the US?
Yes, I just mentioned with the previous caller that we've done 4 evaluations over that kind of period of time.
That's great news in my opinion as well. Certainly not saying, but there is the potential with those trials for further sales. So that's fantastic news in my opinion. So look, I've got no other questions, Brent. Congratulations to you and the board for a job well done, mate.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good day.
Thank you.
There are no further questions at this time. That does conclude our conference for today. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.